You're watching Pyro Media Network.
We just keep on walking, but never really getting nowhere. It's like we keep on talking, but never really saying nothing. On different sides, on different times, stuck in a ways we ain't changing. Can't read your mind, and I've really tried. You won't let me in like we're strangers. Say opposites, supposed to attract, but we both can tell it feels often. Should let it go, but somehow we fold, and it happens way too often. We're so different, we're so different. How can we act, but we make it fit in? It's just like we're so different, we're so different. I don't quite understand you, you don't get me. It's just like we're blinded by fear.
Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We hope your experience is fruitful. Please feel free to visit our website to find out how you can join our growing family. While we are loading your experience, please do us a quick favor and hit that like button from whichever platform you're watching or listening on. Also, share so others may enjoy as well. And we hope you would consider hitting that subscribe or follow button so you can check out more of our amazing content. All right, let's start the show.
So, is it pretty punishment or is it accountability? Welcome back to Tammy's Take. Let's start the show. Hello and welcome back to Tammy's Take. I am so glad you're here. If this is your first time, welcome. If you are coming back, welcome back. Okay, so today's show, this show is very personal to me as somebody who understands a little bit about pretty privilege and pretty punishment. Like those two things can exist. So today's show, we're going to be talking about a very hot topic that's in the news right now, and that is Dr. Cheyenne Bryant. Now, you had to have been living underneath a rock if you don't know who this beautiful woman is. This is Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, and I think a lot of us became familiar with Dr. Cheyenne Bryant. First, I think she was on the Camp Newton show, and then she got Nick Cannon together, and she was on a few of these shows with mostly men podcasters, right? And a lot of what Dr. Cheyenne Bryant was talking about was accountability in relationship, how she chooses to date, how she thinks women should date, and how she thinks men should date. For a lot of people, she was the counter to a Kevin Samuels, and to some people, she was just Kevin Samuels in woman form. Recently, it came out that Dr. Cheyenne Bryant does not hold licensure as a doctor. And so that was the first shoe that dropped in the Dr. Cheyenne Bryant saga. Then shortly after that, we learned that Dr. Cheyenne Bryant cannot produce her degrees, her transcript from a school that I have seen personally many Black women and Black people say they can go to a website and download their transcripts, their degrees from the exact same school that Dr. Cheyenne Bryant said she went to. So is this a matter of she can't get access to these transcripts and her degrees, or she simply doesn't have them? Now, I am not on this show arguing the right or the wrong. It is wrong. It is wrong to misrepresent yourself to an audience, to potential clients, and most importantly, what could have been potential patients, because she was saying she was a therapist, a doctor, meaning she went to school, she had the training, she did the case study, she did the work. And so I don't think it's right to misrepresent yourself to anybody, whether it's the audience that you're talking to, clients, potential clients. So This show tonight is not about the right or the wrong. We're going to be talking about pretty punishment. And if this is something she's actually experiencing, or what she's experiencing is collective accountability. Now, I have said, and if you follow me on all the platforms that I exist on, I say constantly, accountability only happens in community. So we jump on the internet and we say things like, no, we're just holding you accountable. You really can't hold anybody accountable that you're not in community with, because how exactly are you going to hold them accountable? All right. So if you make a video, they can block you. They didn't see your video. You leave a comment, they delete it and block you. They didn't even read your comment, right? They don't even know you. Accountability happens when I can say, hey girl, when I can send Cheyenne a text and say, hey girl, all right, you don't put your foot in this, and what you did was wrong. And this is what you need to do. This is how you need to make amends, right? I'm in community with her. I have access to her to hold her accountable. Now, what we are doing is holding her responsible for how she has introduced herself to us and how she has represented herself to not just us, but again, and the most important is potential clients. When you are dealing with somebody's mental health, right? Mental health, there are criterias that you should meet to do that. Now this is where I'm going to lose some of you, especially if you look like me. The question I asked on my platform and the question I want to ask here as we're having this conversation about Dr. Cheyenne. If Dr. Cheyenne did everything she did, said everything she said, but instead of therapist, she was pastor, what credentials do you believe the Black community specifically, because there may be some white folks who know who Cheyenne Bryant is, but this is a family gathering that's happening right now. This is a family conversation that's happening, and family means people who look like you and me, who are Black. Okay. If Cheyenne did everything she did, went on all the podcasts, said all the things, but she wasn't therapist, and we have to now use air quotes until Cheyenne can prove that she in fact was a therapist or did the training to be a therapist, even if she didn't go for licensure. So we're going to use air quotes therapist. If she didn't say therapist, if she said pastor, what credentials do we believe in the Black community we would have been clamoring for? The answer to that, I think, if we're going to be honest and not, project and turn this back to her. Again, I've already said, misrepresenting yourself to your audience, misrepresenting yourself to potential clients is wrong. That's wrong. I'm not debating that. I'm not even arguing that fact. It is wrong. But the question I ask, if she did all of this, if she was on the podcast like Sarah Jakes is, if she was on podiums like Sarah Jakes is, if she was talking about counseling people like Sarah Jakes has, all of these people that are in the forefront of our consciousness, if she was doing all of that, but she was Pastor Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, how many of us would have said, excuse me, where did you go to seminary? And where did you get your doctorate degree in theology? Was that school accredited? Where can we look that up? That you have your degree in theology to teach me or preach to me about religion. We never ask these questions. And when I pose that question on my platform, I want to be clear. This is not a conversation about making her right or excusing her behavior, but I want us to think deeper about how we allow people inside community to trespass us, right? The reason why Dr. Cheyenne Bryant could do that to us, right, because this is an in-community conversation, is because there's already a blueprint to do it to us, and it's called through religion. Because a lot of what Cheyenne Bryant, whether we want to acknowledge this or not, felt very churchy. There's a content creator that I follow on TikTok. I think her name is Tashira. She's an attorney that does commentary as well as fashion. And she said the thing that makes these people in our community do well is they all have that very churchy sound, much like Stormy Wellington. And the reason why they all have that churchy sound is because the blueprint to do this, to misrepresent yourself, to esteem yourself higher than you really are, to give yourself credentials that ain't really credentials, there's a blueprint that happens at church. T.D. Jakes was once considered America's bishop. Okay? America's bishop. T.D. Jakes never went to seminary. T.D. Jakes have doctorate degrees and master's degrees from schools that are not accredited. You can Google that. You can Google that information. And yet, he is revered within the Black community. He is listened to in the Black community. He is respected in the Black community. And he's made millions from the Black community. And so Cheyenne Bryant and a Stormy Wellington, they already had the model of how to do this to us and with us. And that's why she could come out and misrepresent herself and think nobody was going to ask the question. And ironic, isn't it ironic that this whole thing began to unravel because she went on the Joe Budden podcast? It was on that podcast that we all learned that she was not licensed as a therapist, which then started this rabbit hole about, okay, well, if you're not licensed as a therapist, are you actually a therapist? Do you have your doctorate degree? Because had she not said that on that podcast, had she not tried to get out in front of it to explain why she doesn't do office work or isn't licensed as a therapist, had she not done that, would anybody be looking into Cheyenne Bryant? Probably not. We would also be enjoying her gathering the men when we felt like she was gathering the men, or gathering the women when we felt like she was gathering the women. Now, here's another thing that I think that's upsetting a lot of people within the Black community. One of the things that Black people take great, great pride in is education, working hard for it. Because for a lot of Black people, and more specifically Black women, education is hard fought. And it's not just hard fought in the work, the commitment, the time, especially to get a doctorate or PhD. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of effort, both emotional labor. Some Black women can't even work. They have to quit their jobs in order to commit to the PhD program. And how do they do that? Student loan. So as they're working towards this degree, this distinction, they are getting themselves further in debt to do. And then they do all of that work. They incur all of that debt. And sometimes it's for naught, because they go into a workforce where their PhDs don't matter. 600,000 Black women lost their jobs. A lot of those Black women, women with PhDs, doctorate degrees, who are having to find jobs at call centers, working at the mall, doing gig work, while they have a doctorate degree on their wall, a PhD on their wall, debt that's coming out of their eyeballs, and they're having to do gig work. And here is this woman, because this is where the pretty comes in, right? Because pretty does have privileges. And Cheyenne knows that she's a pretty woman. Here comes this pretty woman who, from what I've seen and listened to, seems to be an intelligent woman. Here's this pretty woman who does have a level of intelligence, but she doesn't have the credentials, the work that it took to get those credentials. She's done none of that. And not only is she thriving in a field that some of these Black women have spent years working, right? Years working underneath another therapist, doing hours, to be able to say they are a therapist. They've done all of that work. They're underemployed or unemployed. And here comes this beautiful woman who lied, beautiful woman who is not credentialed, and this beautiful woman who's getting opportunities that they should get. Now, is all of that jealousy? No. Some of that is the function of the system. Last week when I was talking about Stormy Wellington, I said that Stormy Wellington had an opportunity to do something great, particularly as a Black woman, because you can say whatever you want about Stormy Wellington. You have to give her credit for being able to build a life out of nothing. If we are to believe that her life story is what it is, there's something resilient about that. And you have to give her credit for that. And I said, what was so unfortunate is that she had the ability to really do something great for Black women who had a life that she had, and some who come from dire circumstances. And instead of empowering them, she exploited them. She exploited them for her gain. And it feels a lot like that's what Cheyenne was doing to her community, was exploiting us for her gain. That takes nothing away from her intelligence, because I don't believe intelligence live or die at a degree or a diploma. I'm not one of these people that you have to be degreed, you have to be diplomaed to have intelligence, to be able to give sound advice, to be able to coach people out of their life, circumstances. I don't believe that you have to be degreed necessarily for that. What I do believe is that if you are not degreed, you need to speak that you need to represent yourself honestly. We come from a people where wisdom predates books. We come from a people where wisdom predates formal education. Some of the smartest and wisest people we know in our communities, in our families, didn't even graduate elementary school. Doesn't make them less smart. Doesn't make the value that they bring or can bring to you less important. I'm not even arguing the importance of what she's done. I'm not even arguing the importance of how many people's lives she probably shifted and changed. How many clients, the people that hired her for coaching, the people that booked her for speaking engagements. I'm not arguing that nothing that she didn't have value. And so I'm not going to dismiss what she's done simply because she lied. What I am saying is, if you're going to present yourself to the public, present yourself to the audience, you need to tell the truth. You have to understand, right? And this is the part of Black people understanding other Black people and having empathy for ourselves and each other. You have to understand what this feels like to the Black women who worked their asses off for their degrees, who are in debt that they probably will die in for that degree. And yet here you are. You just get to be pretty. You just get to be pretty. And that pretty allows you into rooms that a lot of those Black women who are degreed would never have access to. That pretty allowed you in spaces that a lot of these Black women who are degreed will never be invited into. And so I think people are responding. A lot of the Black women that I've talked to, a lot of the Black women that I'm friends with are responding with, why does she get to do that? Why does she get to lie? Why does she get to grift? Now, a lot of people keep saying she's scammed. And I feel like I don't know that I would say she's scammed. And I'm going to tell you why before y'all get to type it down in them comments. To scam somebody is to take something from them without representing yourself honestly. Because my question is, people say she's scared. Now, if you have clients or people who said, oh my God, I only decided to work with Dr. Cheyenne because I thought she was a doctor. Those people were scammed. Those people were scammed, right? Because they paid you a fee or a rate based on what they thought your credentials were. Because we know the more credentialed people are, the more money they make. The more of an expert you are in anything, the more money you make. Your ability to translate value comes from your ability to translate your own value. So if people paid her, booked her, scheduled her, right, based on what they thought her credentials were, those were the people who were scammed. But the general public, we had the ability to tune in or tune out. So while I don't feel like I was scammed by Dr. Cheyenne, and I don't think the general public, people, those of us who were just in our rooms or in our beds watching her on the Joe Budden show or watching her on Cam Newton, I don't feel scammed by her. But I do think if she has clients who worked with her, companies who booked her, then she scammed them because she did not represent herself honestly. And if they paid a premium to her based on what they thought her credentials were, those people were scammed. Those of us who were sitting in our beds, scrolling the internet and watching her, I need you to tell me exactly how you were scammed. But now let me circle back to my original question. If she was doing everything she was doing, but she was Pastor Cheyenne, what credentials would we be asking for? And this is not to absolve her, but it's for us to take a look as Black people, how often we let people who are not qualified to help us under the guise of religion. And the reason Cheyenne exists, the reason Stormy exists, is because those pastors exist. If you come off churchy enough, you can get us. If you come off spiritual enough, you can get us. If you come off evolved enough, you can get us. And that's why she was able to create an audience, because her formula comes from the church. Don't shoot me. Her formula comes from the church. Now, here's the question that we have to ask ourselves, because Dr. Cheyenne on The Breakfast Club, she talked about a lot of things, but I think a lot of people missed when she said, I didn't know what pretty punishment was until all of this happens. And here's the thing. Now, Dr. Cheyenne, because I'm going to still call you doctor. It don't take nothing off of me. Hell, we call a bunch of folks who don't look like us doctors that shouldn't be, okay? We give folks who don't look like us a bunch of esteem that they shouldn't have either. So I'm not bothered by calling her Dr. Cheyenne. But Dr. Cheyenne, this is where you lost me. This is where you lost me. You lost me when you said, I did not know what pretty privilege is. I think you're far too intelligent of a woman to not know what that was. And if you did not know what that was, that only highlights you didn't go to nobody's psychology school. Okay? I work in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I work in the area of empathy. I'm an expert in that field. And what makes me an expert is that I do extensive research. I read. I wrote a book. I do all the things related to empathy. I have a product, the empathy scorecard, self-empathy scorecard. I know my field of study, right? I know it. I do it all the time. I created these scorecards so people understand what empathy is. I wrote a book so people understand what empathy. This is my area. There's no way you're going to get me to believe, Dr. Cheyenne, that a woman of your intelligence didn't understand what pretty punishment was. You lost me there. But I do think that accountability and the fact that you may be getting punished because you are pretty, because like I said, there's women who look different than you who didn't have the access you had. And I know, and you know, that a lot of that access you got was because you are pretty. We're going to take a commercial break, and then I'm going to end it with a monologue. And I want you guys to please stay put for that, because I want to talk about pretty punishment and accountability and how we have to look at the nuance in that, because those two things does exist. I'll see you after the commercial.
Hey, how y'all doing? Real quick, this is Daryl Walter, host of the Daryl Walter Show. I know. And you are watching Pyro Media Network.
Hey, it's Pastor Kim from It's Just Kim Live Show, and you're watching Pyro Media Network.
Hey, it's Dr. Nicole D. Vick from Dr. Victorious, and you're watching Pyro Media Network.
Welcome back. Okay, right before the break, I asked the question, was it pretty punishment or accountability? What makes conversations like the one surrounding Dr. Cheyenne Bryan so difficult is that people often assume there are only two choices. Either someone is being unfairly attacked because of envy, projection, and resentment, or they're simply being held accountable for misrepresentations. But human situations are rarely that clean. If the criticism surrounding her centers on questions around credentialing, licensing, or qualifications she publicly presented, then accountability is a legitimate conversation. People absolutely have the right to ask questions when someone positions themselves as an expert, particularly in areas connected to mental health, emotional well-being, and psychological guidance. Credibility matters in those spaces because people make real decisions based on the authority we claim to have. At the same time, it is also possible that appearance, visibility, and gender shaped the intensity and the tone of the reaction she received. Those two things coexist. Accountability and projection are not mutually exclusive. This is where empathy and nuance becomes important because the internet often struggles to separate criticism from dehumanization. Once people believe someone has been dishonest or misleading, the conversations frequently stops being about the behavior itself and becomes about humiliation, mockery, and destruction. And social media rewards that escalation. So the better question may not be, was it pretty punishment or accountability? The better question may be whether the response remains proportional and rooted in truth, or whether it became emotionally charged in ways that revealed something larger about how we respond to visible women, public figures, and perceived hypocrisy. Because accountability should be about clarity, honesty, and responsibility. Punishment is often about emotional satisfaction, and online, those two things can blur together very quickly. What I think makes people uncomfortable is that they want simple moral conclusions. They want someone to either be completely innocent or completely fraudulent, completely victimized or completely deserving of what happened to them. But reality is often more complicated than that. Someone can overstate or misrepresent credentials and still be subject to disproportionate ridicule. Someone can deserve accountability without deserving public dehumanization. Someone can have genuinely helped people while also being dishonest in ways that matter. Those contradictions are difficult for people because nuance forces us to think instead of react. And empathy does not require you to ignore harm or excuse dishonesty. Empathy simply asks that even in criticism, we remember we are still dealing with a human being and not just a public spectacle. Thank you for watching today's show. See you next time.
Thank you for watching Pyro Media Network. For more information, please visit pyromedianetwork.com.